the post got a lot of information, had a lot of like conversation and questions about what to do about increasing anxiety in your building. So if you are experiencing that, come on in, let's talk about it. So a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, I think what we're seeing is exactly what I would expect to see. It's exactly what I tell people, what I expect to see. We are post-pandemic. We are pre-recession. We are in this kind of like generalized sense of dis-ease or uncertainty in our communities, in our country. And so because adults feel that, kids feel that. And we also have kids who have potentially had some, kind of delays in terms of their social development. So they weren't picking up on facial expressions for 2 whole years. Let's think about that, guys. So kids were not picking up on facial cues, and they weren't having the same types of social interactions. They were essentially conditioned to be afraid of all of the things that developmentally they really needed because of the pandemic. So as we are kind of swinging back from that experience, I think it would be a common occurrence for us to see some increases in anxiety. But a couple things to keep in mind. If you have a teacher who is really struggling with their mental health, you might see an increase in what appears to be anxiety in children. A teacher who's maybe very anxious or very concerned about trying to catch up her students in terms of academics or is struggling with managing behaviors, that uncertainty can trigger anxiety symptoms in kids and generalized discomfort in students. So look for any potential systemic issues that might be happening if you're seeing a bunch of different things in a particular classroom or with a certain teacher. So you definitely want to make sure you keep that in mind. But you also want to look at making sure that we normalize normal human emotions. Being afraid is a normal human emotion. It's necessary at times. And so it's not necessarily something that needs to be diagnosed. Everybody doesn't have general anxiety disorder. What I think a lot of our kids have right now is more so a trauma response. What you might see is an adjustment disorder, right? So they're adjusting, and it's taking them, some kids are taking a little bit longer than other kids because they maybe have had a lot of uncertainty. So in any event, if that's what's going on in your school buildings, in your classrooms, I'm going to give you a few strategies today, okay? So the first thing that I want you to consider is looking at how to make sure that you can maximize your impact. You are one person. You may be one person in multiple buildings. You're not going to be able to do one-on-one sessions with everyone. Even if you have access to referral sources, you're not going to be able to refer everyone for one-on-one sessions. So you really want to look at how you can replicate what you're doing. So I would encourage you to have conversations about how to manage our emotions, how to deal with the feelings that come along with anxiety, and teaching those coping skills. Now, I'm going to drop links to a couple of things in the comments or in the description around this video, depending on where you're watching it. But the first thing I want to encourage you to create, if you have the ability to do so, or to encourage the creation of, is what I'm going to call an anxiety toolkit. And what this really is, from the sense of how we're going to support kids, is it's a kind of a basket or a box or some type of a case that would have a few prompts for coping strategies in one particular space. Now, I have worked a lot with early childhood settings, and so we have the calm down corner. So in some of your elementary classrooms, you may have a calm down corner. In some of the middle schools and high schools, you might have a Zen den, right? But if you want to have these accessible in the classroom, that's a really, really important thing to try and do. So the first thing you want to put in your kind of your anxiety toolkit or your calming kit is you want to look at how can you address all 5 senses. Keep in mind a child who really is having some type of a panic or who really is having, some severe anxiety symptoms, they are not grounded, and you want to use all 5 of their senses to help them ground it. So you want to see, can you figure out something that they can see, something that they can hear, something that they can taste, something they can touch, and something they can smell. So for example, I might have, individually wrapped mints in my calming kit because they can taste the mint, they can smell the peppermint through the mint. They can kind of sense that in their mouth, and that is a way to help ground them, right? I might include like a QR code that they could scan with their phone or their Chromebook or their iPad or whatever they have that would take them to some calming or relaxing videos or playlists. And like I said, I'll include some of these in the links below this video as well. I might include some, sensory items. You probably can buy a yard or two of fabric, whatever happens to be on clearance at Joann's or Hobby Lobby or what have you. And you can cut those into small strips. You can make them small enough that they can be washed, or you can make them small enough that they can be thrown in the trash, right? And just replenished once a year. The idea is that you've got a few of these things really handy to where they can get a couple of different sensory touch points so that they can ground themselves and remind themselves that they are safe. Okay. As far as hearing and seeing, you might want to consider having some videos or like maybe a calming jar or something available where they can focus on something sight-wise. Now, I've also created a few different like printable cards that you can print out, laminate, cut up and laminate, which will teach them some of those, kind of a reminder of some of those coping strategies. The key with the cards, though, guys, is that you want to make sure that either the classroom teacher is taking time once a day or once a week to teach these lessons, like teach a little miniature lesson on how to use this calming strategy, or that you are able to teach that as a part of your lesson. So maybe if you're doing, let's say that you're doing the morning announcement each day, right? And once a week you come on the morning announcement and you teach a particular calming strategy, then you can reinforce it with these cards. It's important to make sure that the kids know how to use the strategy. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what I have created. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see a couple of these examples. All right, so this is just one example. And like I said, I'll share the links to these if you're interested. So this is, for example, there we go. So we've got deep breathing, child's pose, drink water, imagine a quiet place, paint, blow bubbles. Some of these are going to be really accessible in certain situations. Others of these, not so much. So you want to give them some strategies and teach them some strategies. And if you have these printable cards in the little calm down kit, it will give them an opportunity to have a reminder of how to reduce that anxiety, reduce that discomfort that they're feeling. The key here, again, making sure that they have had some training on how to do that before. You don't want to just like, oh, I'm going to just throw these in there and assume they know how to use it, because sometimes they don't know how to use it. So these are some strategies that I would suggest. And again, I would encourage you to empower the teachers, administrators, deans of student culture, empower them to use these strategies as well by creating these kits. Now, if you're low on budget, you say, hey, I'm not going to go out and spend $200 to create these kits. Here's what I would recommend. Most of the major chains of stores will give you a small grant or a small donation towards something like this, right? So you might ask Kroger to sponsor, your calming kits to the tune of $250. You might ask Hobby Lobby. Some of them have a foundation associated with the organization so if you look up, say, like Hobby Lobby Foundation, for example, you might be able to see that there's an actual form that you can fill out and make your request. Now, those are not immediate. Usually it takes, at least a few weeks for you to get a response from that. But a lot of times when you do that, it will take away some of that cost that's associated with it. You can also look at asking your educational foundation, your PTO, if you have a church in your community or a community center. A lot of times there is funding available for this, but we actually just have to ask for it. So creating calm down kits would be a really great strategy. And then the last thing is, because I said we are sometimes seeing systemic issues or things where there's a lot of kind of trickle down effect on the kids, incorporate something mindful at the start or the end of the day for the staff. If you can muster that, that energy up. Hey guys, we're going to do like a 10-minute, I'm going to do a 10-minute meditation before, we open up the doors for the kids to come in. If you're interested, just come to my office and we can do it that way. Or I'm going to be in the cafeteria before the kids come in. Feel free to come in and we'll do like a mindful moment, that kind of thing. Anything that you can do to kind of shift the culture away from one that is filled with fear and anxiety and stress will definitely benefit you and the kids as well. So if you have other suggestions of what you've tried in your building, feel free to leave a comment around this video, and make sure that you grab your downloads, and I'll make sure that the links are in the comments as well. Have a great rest of your day, guys.